Citizens in Littleton passed a measure this week requiring voter approval before the city can utilize urban renewal economic development tools such as tax increment financing or eminent domain. David, this was a big deal that happened really off the, I mean, even as the coverage was, it was a very small coverage in the Denver Post of even analyzing this. But as cities go, I can't imagine any others that would say, that would put this kind of restriction on their city. Is this as big a deal as we think?
Sure, that this is breaking up that iron triangle that exists between the government officials and the contracting lobby and the corporate welfare hogs. The voters of Littleton, I think, agreed with what Supreme Court Justice Samuel Chase said back in Calder versus Bull in 1798, that you don't even need a constitution to tell that some things are flagrantly illegal and contrary to the rule of law itself. And the prime example of that is taking X's property to give it to Y. And that's what so-called urban renewal has become in this state, which is robbing from one business to give it to another to give the property to another more politically powerful business. The voters of Littleton overwhelmingly rejected that. In fact, they passed one measure which was put on as the lesser thing, which was just to stop that, and passed that by a huge margin. And then on the other measure, which was to say, when you have these, give pseudo-governmental power to corporations, to say we're going to have a corporate welfare shopping mall, and the sales taxes, the taxes that the people pay, which are supposed to go to the government, instead go to the shopping mall developer for improvements there. Well, if that's going to happen, that's going to have to be approved by the people themselves. Again, that's the spirit, at least, of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, that the people choose on the taxes. 60-40 win on this. The voters got the corporate welfare triangle, outspent the citizens 30-1, and you still have this result. I think you will see this movement spread throughout the state, and it is long overdue. You can be pro-business and pro-free enterprise, and if you are, that means you want them to stand on their own 2 feet and not succeed by going to city councils so that the city council will order the robbery of some other business to benefit the more politically powerful one.
Eric, David's last point is one that intrigues me. Is this going to catch on? Littleton is not known as some city that is always going rogue. It's pretty mainstream, right smack dab in the middle of Arapahoe County, and it did win very by overwhelming margins, with like David said, being outspent 30-1. Do you think other cities are listening?
I don't know if other cities are listening, but I think voters in other cities are listening, and interest groups who are aligned with David. And what fascinates me about this issue is I think it is one of those issues where it unites left and right. There may be some people a little more in the middle who aren't quite there yet, but I think the populist left shakes their head yes and at what David says, and the conservative right shakes their head yes at what David says. So it's an interesting coalition. There were actually 2 issues, as I understand it, on the Littleton ballot, both of which passed by huge margins. One, to require a vote of the people before any use of eminent domain or tax increment financing. And the second one that further limits eminent domain only in cases when requested or initiated by the property owner. I think there is the potential for this to catch some fire. Obviously, it's not going to be put on by city councils. It's not going to be funded by established interests. It's going to have to be an insurgent kind of thing, petitioned onto the ballot, as was the case, I believe, in Littleton. And we'll see. I think my question is, as long as Littleton is an outlier, does it put the city at some kind of competitive disadvantage where some deals that might otherwise come to Littleton go elsewhere? And that might be a price that Littleton is very happy and willing to pay. But if this gains traction and more than one municipality does it, then the competitive disadvantage issue also goes away.
Susan, do you think this gains traction?
Absolutely. I think in Colorado, urban renewal does not necessarily represent the interests of the electorate. And if we had a real true representative municipal government that were not influenced by big money and development, that would be one thing. But as anyone who has watched municipal government closely and covered it, tax increment financing and eminent domain are grossly abused. I mean, that is the territory of cronyism. And so I also think there's this issue of local control. I mean, among the left, if you believe that local communities should have control over whether there's fracking in their community, why should they not have control over whether their taxes get spent on some gentrification?
Patty, if you're a developer looking to come to Colorado, this is a popular city in Denver. I'm not saying we call it booming, but it's been pretty popular, especially considered our recession years. Is this a warning out there, kind of a canary in coal mine, that it might be a little bit different in the years ahead?
It might mean you want to consider Walsenburg or Trinidad, places where the economy is not doing as well. And I think what we're going to see, it's not just that people don't trust TIFs, and we've seen abuses in the past. I think it also becomes more of a referendum on growth itself. People see that Colorado is growing. Littleton is certainly growing. Denver is certainly growing. And there are a lot of issues coming up where we're going to be voting again on taxes. If you look at the big stock show master plan, which City Council is supposed to sign off on Monday night, it's $854 million and counting. And there are 35 private property owners that will have to sell their property in order for this plan to go through, whether they want to or not. So we may see some cases coming along that will bring this eminent domain issues, the issues of what we're going to pay for as taxpayers, because that whole proposal calls for the extension of the lodging tax. And I think at a certain point, even in Denver, which usually would tax itself plenty, people might start saying, we don't want to pay for more growth.